All right, welcome to Comfortably Uncomfortable. You've got Sandy and Alex here, and we are here to empower women to choose courage over comfort by getting comfortably uncomfortable. We get real and cut through the bullshit. Are you ready to get a little weird? Because we're going to laugh, sweat, cry, and grow together.
No topic is going to be TMI. Well, maybe for me, but not for Sandy. We complement each other in that way. Okay, so are we ready?
Well, yeah, duh, I am, but are you?
Okay, let's go.
The one with the money. Show me the money. I mean, so one of my favorite movies. Can you name that movie? What movie?
Jerry Maguire.
There we go, Jerry Maguire.
I almost said Tim McGraw. I don't know why.
Tim McGraw, Tom Cruise, what else?
Yeah.
Okay, so money, we made it here. When we took like our first survey of like what makes people comfortably uncomfortable or just flat out uncomfortable,
Yep.
it is the talk of money. And this is both out of our comfort zones because we aren't, I do not claim to be an expert on money or, you know, I'm not a financial guru. I will say like I do have financial gurus in my family. And I default to them for a lot of wealth management, investment stuff, because I'm like, I fix your body that you can, but
yep, everyone can stick to their expertise and we can all be happy.
Exactly. But I will say it was interesting doing research for this episode and just in life in general, going from somebody who was married, a dual income household to a stay-at-home mom, from a single income household to a single mom, you know, like I've had to definitely dabble in this personally.
Right.
And then I was telling you the story when we were talking about this, like I'm going to go off right off the bat of like, the wage gap is real. And it's not just for your C-suite women out there in the world. It's like case in point, it happened to me at a gym where I came in with a master's, with experience, and nobody talked about anything about salary. So when I got my, like the whole shindig of like, everybody starts here, this is where we are. And of course I'm trusting and like, of course, yeah, sounds good. It's fine. And then of course I asked questions. People seemed to talk to me and I was like, are you effing kidding me? The male trainer that was there hired the same time with less education, with about the same experience, was getting paid more than me. And I was
pissed. Infuriating.
Because there was
it's also
no reason why that trainer should have gotten paid more than me. But even less, there was no reason why I should have gotten paid less. So I didn't want them to get paid less. I wanted me to get paid more and be matched.
Right. I mean, that's so infuriating, but I do feel like in a way you were very fortunate to have had that conversation with someone, that someone was open enough to discuss it with you.
Correct.
Because I mean, we've talked about that is the biggest hurdle.
Correct.
That no one talks about it. So in a job like that where it's very equal, like the work is very equal.
I mean, there's so many jobs that like, how is a job not equal? What can a man and a woman do that aren't the same? Like, that's what I don't understand is like this idea of like, it's so taboo to talk about salary. It's so taboo. And like companies have clauses of like, you cannot talk about what you make with other people.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's insane. Like it only benefits the enterprise.
So have you heard of equal pay day? I love that this is becoming more of a thing. So equal pay day is March 24th, or was March 24th, 2021. It's the date that measures how far into the year we close the wage gap. So by March 24th of this year, women had made enough last year plus January, February, March to equal what men made last year in the same job.
I just shake my head. Like, I just shake my head and just I'm like, are you kidding me? And like they want to say
it's
like,
amazing though to have that date. Like it's a real problem. And that date marked is like in your face. Like it took 3 months for women to catch up this year to close the gap.
Right. And so like that's the first section of like when we talk about money, wage gap, we're working women, we are working moms. Like it's just silly that in this day and age, we have to fight as hard as we do to get the same pay for the same job. Like, it's silly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
moving into more of like the psychology of money, like to me, I'm like, that's just like, y'all, you need to speak up. You need to speak to each other. You need to stand, like, male counterparts should stand and help and support the female counterparts
Yep.
to be making the same amount as you. Like, that's all I'm going to say on
Mm-hmm.
that. But moving into like the psychology of money, this is where I got like all giddy of just like, ooh, this is so interesting. And this is probably why people are so uncomfortable to talk about money.
Oh,
And
tell me more.
well, it's this idea of like, it's one of the number one reasons why people get divorced.
Mm-hmm.
One of the hardest things I think to maybe talk about with your kids, and especially like right
Yeah.
now, it's like it's no longer like a physical thing. Like, we don't carry around dollar bills anymore, and
Yeah,
like
you're right.
it's like and now we have this whole Bitcoin and like this whole nother currency.
Mm-hmm.
And then this book, I mean, it's me, so I'm reading all these books and then reading all this stuff of like, it's like comes down to your viewpoint on money and your priorities of money and how you were raised around money, which
Mm-hmm.
again, to me, my health coach, brain goes, oh my gosh, it's the same thing with like
It's,
everything
yeah,
else in your life,
it's
your
all the same.
relationship with food, your relationship with
Mm-hmm.
exercise, your relationship with
Yeah.
other people.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
to see it and view it from that manner, it was like, aha, like there
Mm-hmm.
it is. Because, in my past marriage, I thought we were on the same page with money. Like, we both saved really well. We both came from privileged lives of like not having a lot of debt. Like, they set us up. Yet, as we dug deeper and got past the, like, oh, superficial level, you're in your early 20s, this is what we think about money. And like, we got into like the deep core stuff,
Mm-hmm.
it was definitely an issue. It was definitely a problem in the sense of like, we could not get eye to eye. Because for me, money is important to have, and I want to have stability, and I want to be able to provide for my family, but it does not define me. It does
Right.
not rule my every single waking decision.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, I mean, I can't speak for him, but I will say my ex had different views, and it was very apparent like where the priorities laid. And that came down, I don't know if it was a way you were raised, or it's a trauma thing, or it's a,
Right.
like, I mean, if you ask me personally, I think it came to like how he defined his own success in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again,
Ego
that's,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, like an ego thing. So that was like the key point of like, when talking about money, one of the important things is understanding the psychology of the money of your counterpart or the person you're talking to about it.
Yeah.
Where we usually
Right.
go quick to like, let's budget, let's do this, let's do that, but we miss the like, well, where are you coming from your perspective?
It's so, and I think, I mean, personally, I've learned a lot more about my own psychology of this. When
Yeah, you
you
learn,
watch your
yeah.
parents at
Hmm.
when you're an adult, and you understand like where some thoughts, like why you have some thoughts in your head, and why it might be different from someone else. Because again, to your point, it's sort of this ingrained thing, whether it was on a purposeful education or not. The subconscious education certainly informs our attitude towards it, and you don't understand that someone else could have a completely different attitude about it. But I think it's also really helpful to have those, it can be helpful to have those different perspectives, like maybe, one grounding the
Of
other.
course. I mean, I think that comes back in like, here we go, another episode of like communication, because that
Hmm.
can be the foundation of how to have successful conversations
Yeah.
around something
Man,
that's so
if you
intense.
can have a successful conversation about money, you're in a solid solid relationship, I feel like.
Right. And I
So
think
hard.
because it is so grounded and ingrained in us, because it's hard to admit that maybe you lived in a family that like they didn't prioritize this, meaning they didn't really teach you this, so you kind of
Yeah.
had to just fend for yourself. And so I've seen that manifest when I start conversations, because this is what I do, right? You don't want to invite me to a dinner party because I start a uncomfortable. And then I sit back and I'm like, ooh, let me see this.
Let
And
me keep
even more
digging.
so, yeah, because even more so, I haven't, been in a crowd in over a year and a half.
Right? I know.
So, but
it's hard to re-socialize, Sandy.
it is. Yet, like, what's fascinating is we hold on and are ingrained in some of that stuff, like subconsciously, of like either to do the opposite of what our parents did,
right,
or like hold on to it because that's how we were raised and they're good people. And so again, I back off of just coming from a non-judgmental, welcoming, like, hey, I just want to learn about why you think about money in this way, could be a great way to just like make this uncomfortable conversation a bit more like, we're not even going to talk about actions. We're just going to sit here and like, I want to learn more about why you think the way you think.
Right.
Now, after you've done that, right?
Yeah.
And you want to kind of budget or figure out what's to need to do.
What's
like
next? Yeah.
like what's next? Like, and again, like I think the same thing of being on a, quote unquote diet, because I hate diets, but it's consistency. It's like pick one method that you believe in or that it makes sense to you and go for it. Because consistency is going to be the key. Like, do you know who Warren Buffett is?
Yes.
Okay, so I love him in the sense of like
he's hilarious.
He's hilarious. He's like that old man.
Yeah.
But in multiple books, they talk about like, why is Warren Buffett like Warren Buffett? Because his wealth management return has never been like crazy in that sense of like, whoa, this guy. The thing he did is consistency. Like he started young and he kept going, and he was risk averse, and so like he just kept going, and that's what came back of this idea of like, okay, be Warren Buffett of like, you don't have to be so crazy in your ideas, like the diet of like, you don't have to go on some 30-day crazy challenge to do it.
You little bits at a time
and carve and chip away at it. But I found this article. It said Warren Buffett believes 3 decisions in life separate those who succeed from those who fail. And he didn't let me down because, of course, I'm like waiting to be like, here are the trade secrets.
Yeah.
And we'll link this little article from Inc. And basically comes down, and I love this. One of the quotes in here, it says, you only have to do a very few things right in your life so long as you don't do too many things wrong.
Oh my God, I love that.
So again, here's this financial guru, and he's like giving you encryption quotes, but his advice for success, number 1, is invest in yourself. And I just love that. I love that. Of like,
that's a good one.
Educating yourself, becoming more aware, acquiring knowledge, and not just
always learning.
Investor, always learning. Like, then right here it says, like honoring your communication skills. Buffett says you will become worth 50% more than you are now, just by honoring your communication skills. So like, I just love that. I love that it was like, it's not a quick money scheme, blah, blah, blah. It's and
it's not speaking a certain way. It's again, just like embracing yourself, embracing your skills, your strengths, identifying those first, I think, but embracing those skills.
And number 2, which totally goes hand in hand with what we just talked about as far as guilt, but it says measure your success by your inner scorecard. So saying here, like when setting the bar for your own goals, don't fall for the trap of measuring it by other people's measure of success.
All right. Well, there we go. Go back to the guilt.
I know, right?
Episode we just
look at that. We just know more than we think. But this idea of like when we hear stories of financial people or famous people that have all this money and then all of a sudden they go bankrupt or they gamble it away or whatever. And I think it's back to that psychology of money of like, when is enough enough? Why are you letting it run you? And understanding that like this definitions of success, it's like, not everyone has to have $1 million to feel successful or even live the kind of life that they want to live. Yet we live in a society where it's like the more money you have equates the better you are or something like that, where I just think that's bullshit, because it's like, well, everyone's level of comfort is going to be different. So I just loved that. I love that. And then third, I'm telling you, I would just give Warren Buffett a big ol' hug. Your life's success should be defined by one four-letter word. Love.
Oh.
I know, right? And I know we can sit here and be like, okay, Warren Buffett, you can say that because you're one of the wealthiest
I
men
know, because you're
alive,
worth billions.
blah, blah, blah. But if you look
But
into him, he's like that grandpa of just
oh my
like,
gosh.
you don't hear too much about him in the news, like driving flashy cars or whatever. Like
No,
he's
he
just,
doesn't. And
Mhm.
there are stories about him. I'm gonna butcher this, but like he sets aside his $1.58 for his coffee and breakfast sandwich from McDonald's like every morning. And like if he does
I didn't
something
know that.
well, he'll give himself like a few extra cents to like upgrade the meal or
Oh, that's
something.
awesome.
But he's a very frugal man, but it's worked.
Well,
Uh,
it's again,
but
it's
the
like,
stories are wonderful. I do love I love that he's ending with love, and it just go again,
mhm.
like I was not expecting this to tie in so much with the guilt episode or so many of the other episodes, but it's like
Yeah.
finding this joy in the place you are. Like meet yourself where you're at and
Mhm.
find joy in it instead of trying to live up to these crazy expectations. And I mean, I know it's so cheesy, but I've heard it from multiple people recently. And
Mhm.
maybe the pandemic is kind of shining a light on it, but it's like if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
Right.
And it, easier said than done. It's very
Well,
hard to have the privilege to do
yeah.
that, but finding like again, like meeting yourself where your head's at and like, understanding what can bring you joy.
Well, and not falling for a trap of that, like, well, my neighbor has this, right? Or they got this new car, or they got this new thing. And like, I started following, oh my gosh, some minimalist on Instagram. I forget. But anyway, I just love it. It's like, use things, love people is like their tagline. And
Mm.
just this thing of like, don't love things, use people. And just again, bringing ourselves back to Warren Buffett's of like, in the end, it's love, of just like
You have to
not
figure out who that
allowing.
is.
I
I
will. I'll
wanna
figure it
I
out
wanna
and then
tag that.
yeah.
That's a really good.
And I just think that's so simple and so awesome. But let's be realistic. Like when I think about Stella growing up and how much things are costing, like
Mhm.
education, and then how
Yeah.
much like we're getting paid,
Yeah.
the number one thing that when people and I was reaching out to and talk about and like they're like student loans, like debt
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
America specifically is insane.
Yeah.
And I feel definitely fortunate enough of the fact that like I wasn't coming out of my undergrad with a ton of debt because it's legitimately you starting your professional career in a hole. And so
Yeah.
how do
Yeah.
you get
This
out of
cloud
this
over your head.
hole? Right? And like there's been this whole thing on renting and in the market of Chicago of just this idea of, the only reason why people are renting is because they don't have the capital, right? So like if they didn't start off with the capital, then they can't put a down payment on a home. And so
Right.
then they're trying to pay off debt, but also pay rent and all this stuff. And so that like hit me hard. And I was like, okay. And, my big shift of moving from a dual income household to then being a single working mom and then trying to go back to school and understand that I'm going to incur some debt and what does that look like. I'm an actionable person and I like to have these like steps to where this can help me. And
Yeah.
I'm definitely we're not linked to this. It's not something that I am, getting paid to promote. But for me, what worked was Dave Ramsey. I loved how just, he shoots from the hip. He's like, here are these things. I don't care what background you come from. Like, this
Mhm.
is just simple. Try it, stick to it, and it's working. And it
Yeah, I
didn't just
looked
work
it
for
up those
me, but it's
baby
worked
steps.
for lots of people. And it's
Yeah.
Dave Ramsey's baby steps, 7 baby
Mm.
steps. And it's just like, yeah, it's like baby step number one, save 1,000 for your starter emergency fund. And it's like, start there. Just try and save $1,000
Yeah.
for whatever might happen. However you do that, do it. And then his big thing, he's a big guy on like pay off all debt except the house using the debt snowball. Cause he is a true believer that debt is the thing that holds you back. And a lot of us, like, they have student forgiveness loans and all this stuff where like they don't have to pay interest on the school loan. So they're like, oh, I won't pay that now because it's not accruing interest. Yet it's like in 10 years, who knows what happens in 10 years, right? You
right. I think, education's going to change a lot in the next few years. But I think it's a good thing to have new perspective on that. Like, you could have this amazing education and a lot of debt, and or maybe not have any debt, and there are tons of ways to have a lot of success if you don't have this education that you think you're supposed to.
I mean, you and I talked about that a little bit of like how the stress of picking a college and this Ivy League kind of like, oh, I have an Ivy League education, that's going to set me up for this and this, where it's like, not really. Maybe,
no,
who knows? Like,
I mean, I have an Ivy League education, and I expected at this point in my life to be making much more money than I am, but I've completely shifted my life, like totally turned it upside down and started this new adventure. So it's, it's a work in progress, but I know plenty of people who, don't have quote unquote, like as good of an education, if you want to say that, but make tons of money. And so, it's all a matter of, I don't know, priorities, experience, that work. I mean, there's so much, but I do think it's going to change a lot, because I think it's important to recognize that it doesn't have to be a certain way to have like what is defined as success.
Yeah. And back to Warren Buffett's thing, like his first thing wasn't go to an Ivy League school. It was invest in yourself. So whatever that means to you, like understanding that maybe a small school college or community college or whatever your end goal is, like it doesn't have to be the same path as anybody else.
Yeah.
And then, understanding that if you're like me and money is holding you, or it's uncomfortable, or like you're not sure, maybe you and your partner see differently because of the psychology of money, and you need to find like a common ground, like using Dave Ramsey's 7 baby steps maybe is that common ground, And so even though it's uncomfortable to talk about, even though we know that we might be coming from a completely different psychology of money, like you could start here and say, well, this is actionable. Let's start here. And at least
blame it on someone else for now.
Oh yeah, sure. Exactly. But that's where it's like, I'm sure we're going to talk about this again, but wanted to bring it up of understanding that money is more than just money. Because most likely it means more to somebody than just the dollar bill. And so digging deeper into what that is going to open up a whole new world. And then, like I'm a big supporter of like, own your life and do what you want to do and how you want to live it. And if you are drowning in debt, like you can do it. Like you can do it. And Dave Ramsey has definitely helped me. And I know has helped many people I know personally, as well as around the world. So
research it, write it down.
And if it doesn't work for you, find something else, but stick to it, because it is about consistency.
All right, good. All about the money.
Next time. Thank you for showing up today. Getting awkward is always more fun with friends. Give us a review, tag us, and share us so we can continue to grow together.
Use hashtag CUPod, letter C, letter U, or tag us. You can find Sandy on Instagram at sweatandshineon and Alex at aj.afterbabyfit on Instagram and afterbabyfit on Facebook and YouTube. We'll see you next time.